Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So this is part 2 of our Stratocaster series, and I'm just building a Stratocaster out of some eBay and Amazon parts. Just as a quick review, this is a Starcaster neck. We've already added some nice tuners to it. The body is a 42mm body that I got off of eBay. I've already done some routing. I've already cleaned up the neck pocket and fitted the neck. I've added the strap buttons, and I've measured for the bridge. We've got a pretty nice loaded aged white pick guard with some Alnico pickups in it that I built on a previous episode. Got a matching back plate, and I've got a tremolo that I'll tell you more about, and some other miscellaneous parts. In the interim between episodes, I went ahead and shielded the cavities. It's a tedious process, but all you do is lay down strips of copper tape and stick it down. I've got shielding in both the main cavity and in the jack pocket, and I've got these little tabs overlapping so that these copper tape areas make contact with something else that's grounded, like the pick guard or the jack plate. But I will go ahead and add a ground strap to this main cavity. Alright, so first things first, let's start on this bridge. I want to drill these holes for the base plate, and to do that, let me show you how we locate it using the pick guard and other methods. So to start with, I laid a piece of tape across the front of where the bridge goes. This is definitely going to be in the path of the screws, and that's the main thing I wanted to cover. I needed a place to draw lines. Then I placed a straight edge up against the sides of the neck and continued that line all the way down on both sides onto the tape. Once I had the line drawn on both sides, I found the center line. You can do that with a ruler, or you can do it with something more precise, like maybe even a dial caliper. But either way, you just want to know where the center is. And then just for fun, I also carried these two body lines down and made sure that the routing for the pickups was centered around the center line that I had found. That's just a double check. You don't absolutely have to do that one. The next thing I did was measure from the inside edge of the nut all the way down to 25.5 inches, and I drew a line. That's the closest line that you see to you there, which is my scale length. Then, if you place your pick guard and you get it fitting where you want it up here around the neck, and you make sure that you've got good fitment side to side where you're not getting a lot of contact with the pots against the body, and the switch is fitting and everything's kind of lining up, you can basically set it in place. Then you're going to want to place your bridge in the cutout for it on the pick guard and try to determine if it matches the center that you drew on the piece of tape. And what you'll want is that center line to intersect basically between the middle two saddles all the way through between the middle two holes, and just see if using that center line creates about the same amount of space on each side of your pick guard with relation to the bridge. Then I try to continue that gap all the way around, although sometimes you have to get a little bit closer to the pick guard with the front edge of the bridge than you do on the sides. Now in my case, I did have to clean up a little bit of finish in the front of this cavity here, so you'll note that that wood there is kind of exposed, and that's because I had to come in and take a little bit of that finish off. It was just a little bit goopy in that spot. So you'll want to watch out for things like that, especially on these less expensive bodies. Once you've established kind of where you want your bridge, you need to check your scale length with relation to this high E saddle. So you run a tape measure down from your nut, inside edge of your nut, and try to determine if this thing at 25.5 is going to hit this front screw, and how much adjustability there is in it after that. You basically want this one to be 25.5 because it's going to be the farthest one forward. So all that stuff considered, I have 25.5 here. I've got plenty of adjustability to move these other ones back. I've got it where I'm not hitting my screws on each side with my saddles. I've got equal gaps on each side of my pick guard. I've got a nice equal gap across the front. All that is considered. Then I draw circles with a pencil in the outside two holes. And so that's what I've got here on the tape, is a couple of circles that were drawn in. Then I made some hash marks so that they're sort of a bullseye looking circle with a hash mark in the middle, so that I can locate my punch whenever I start drilling. Then just for reference, I went ahead and extended that line between the two circles all the way across. This should be roughly the line where all my other screws intersect, but let me show you. I am going to mount this tremolo with these outside two holes first. Then I'm going to come in and draw additional holes, and I'll remove everything, and then I'll drill the last 4. Just one other thing before I actually do this. Another advantage to only drilling 2 of the holes now is just in case I had a little bit of a problem, I had to move the whole thing. I've only got to repair 2 holes. I don't have to repair 6. Now I've measured out my screws and how far they protrude through the base plate. And I've marked off a piece of tape on a drill bit so that I don't go any farther than that. I don't want to punch all the way through into the tremolo cavity. It may happen, sometimes it does happen just because of differences in these bodies and screw lengths and things like that, but I'd like to avoid it if I can. I'm going to be using 3 different size drill bits, and this may be overkill, but I want good engagement of the threads. So for the threaded portion of the screw, I'd like to drill a pretty consistent hole all the way down that's about the same size of the shaft of that threaded portion of the screw without the threads. Then there is a little bit of a shoulder above that where there's no threads on the screw, and that portion is a little bit bigger. So I've got a drill bit that's that size, and I'm going to be basically taking about a 1/4 inch or so of the top of the hole out with that bit. Then I've got an even bigger bit that I'm going to use to remove the finish at the top of the hole so that I don't have any finish cracks in this area when I'm done. And that may be a little bit of overkill, and it's not a necessary step, but I just want to avoid the possibility of cracking this finish. Okay, so that's my 3-stage process. I'm going to go ahead and mount the bridge. Okay, so now we want to do some checks. I'm going to check my pickguard fitment. Well, that looks beautiful. And I'm going to check my scale length. That's also spot on, and I'm not hitting the screw at the front of the tremolo, so I think I'm in business. Now with everything in place and my tremolo pushed as far as I can push it to the front of the cavity, and taking a really sharp pencil, I'm going to trace out the holes and mark the locations where I'm going to drill the next 4. Then I just remove it and do it all again for the last 4 holes. I'll show you a still shot of the completed holes for the bridge, and here is the bridge installed. A little bit about this bridge. This is a standard Squier bridge, and really all that's left of what's standard Squier is the base plate, the screws, and the springs and the claw. The block has been upgraded to a full thickness block from Music Lily, and it's a 40mm block, which is perfect for this 42mm body. I find that brass blocks just give you a little bit more sustain, a little bit more heft, and they definitely feel a lot better quality than the original pot metal block. And the saddles I've upgraded to Fender units that are stamped steel and a little bit stronger than the originals, and they definitely wear better. Now I've lost a little bit of audio in some of the segments here, but I'm going to try to weave in some of the original video with some of the video that I'm filming right now. To measure the location for the holes for the claw, you need to install the tremolo first so you can see where the block locates. And then I usually draw a straight line from the center of the block, or the middle spring hole, all the way down to the back of the tremolo cavity using a piece of tape placed at the very top of the cavity. That gives me my center line for my claw, and it makes sure that my springs are going to be parallel to the sides of the tremolo cavity. Now to actually mark the holes that are going to be drilled, you need a piece of tape in the cavity itself on the ledge that's going to be drilled. Then you hold the claw up to that piece of tape, you match up the center line, and then you mark the 2 holes through the claw with a pencil. Then it's just a matter of punching some starter holes and then drilling. Now when it comes to drilling these holes for the tremolo claw, they're almost parallel to the body itself, which makes getting a drill in there very difficult. And you either need a right angle drill or a really long drill bit. And in my case, I use a flexible shaft from DeWalt that turns any drill into a right angle drill, and it's got a very small head on it which allows me to get it inside the cavity and drill that way. These things take a hex shank drill bit, and that's what these things are. They've got a hex base that plugs into that adapter, and they just pop in and out, so they interchange for different sizes. Now when you're installing the tremolo claw screws, you want to use a really long screwdriver to put them in. That flexible adapter does have a screwdriver option, but it's not well suited to the task of installing these screws in the claw because of the position. Also, don't forget to take your tremolo out of the hole before you attempt to drill, because the block will get in the way of your tool. Okay, so here we are. Things have turned out pretty well. The tremolo is square to the hole that it's in. Its springs are parallel to the sides of the body, and everything just looks pretty nice in here. The one thing that I'm really super happy about is that this was the right length tremolo block. I was a little bit worried that it was more for a US made body, but the 40mm block appears to work in this 42mm body really well. The edges of the springs are all underneath the cavity cover. Everything clears just fine. Well, I think that's where we're going to leave things for today's episode. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. All the likes, all the comments, I enjoy every single one. Thank you all for subscribing. Check out my Amazon links, and I'll see you guys next time.